The ballroom's crystal chandeliers shattered light across a sea of tuxedos and gowns, but nothing cut deeper than Damian Hale's voice, slicing through the waltz like a server crash in overdrive. "I'd sooner debug my own code than touch you again," he snarled, recoiling from Aria's lips as if her kiss were a virus. Raw, unbidden, laced with the desperation of a love he'd long coded out. Gasps rippled like error logs. Phones angled in, capturing her crimson gown, clinging like a lover's regret. Her hand frozen midair where his warmth used to ignite wildfires. Laughter erupted, sharp, champagne-fueled, as his mother's eyes gleamed approval from the shadows, the elite circle closing ranks around their fallen queen. In that frozen heartbeat, Aria's world glitched. The man who'd once devoured her body under baylit sheets, thrusting deep with whispers of forever, now reduced her to obsolete code. Hours later, his $300 million empire would ignite, not in flames, but in leaked data storms, boardrooms fracturing like her heart. Hello, my radiant souls. Welcome back to Mr. Cael Stories, where love's hidden algorithms unfold in details that linger like a first touch. To my loyal subscribers, you're the heartbeat of this channel. Your passion fuels every word. And to you new dreamers tuning in, wrap yourself in this community. Hit subscribe and that bell so no spark of romance escapes you. Tonight's fire, it burns with betrayal's heat and redemption's glow. Stick close, because if trust can crumble an empire, what might it rebuild? What secrets would you unearth for love's sake? Drop your whispers in the comments. Let's ignite this thread. If this pulls you in already, smash that like. Share with someone whose heart needs mending. Onward, lovers. Our story awakens. Rain hammered the asphalt like a frantic heartbeat, turning San Francisco's artist district into a blurred watercolor of neon signs and shadowed alleys. Aria Laurent dashed from the gallery's glow, her sundress plastered to her skin, freckles blooming like secrets across her shoulders. She didn't see the Tesla until its headlights sliced the downpour, brakes screeching in protest. The door flew open before she could curse, and there he was, Damian Hale, emerging like thunder given flesh, his dark hair slicked back, obsidian eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that short-circuited the storm. "You're shaking," he said, voice of velvet command that wrapped around her ribs, pulling her closer despite the chill. He shrugged off his wool coat, draping it over her without a word, the fabric warm from his body, carrying cedar and the faint ozone of late-night code sessions. Aria's breath caught, not from cold, but from the way his gaze traced her, not predatory, but hungry for patterns in her chaos. "Let me get you out of this," he added, nodding to his car, the engine purring like a promise. She should have said no. Freelance graphic designer scraping by on coffee and commissions, she knew men like him, tech titans who collected experiences like apps. But his hand brushed her elbow, a spark that raced up her arm, igniting nerves long dormant. "Just to the corner cafe," she countered, sliding into leather seats that cradled her like a lover's hold. The drive was silent electricity. His fingers tapped the wheel in rhythmic code, her thigh inches from his, heat bleeding through denim. At the cafe, steam curled from mugs of black coffee, fogging the window where rain traced erotic paths. "I'm Damian," he said, leaning in, the table a flimsy barrier. "And you? The woman who paints worlds no algorithm could dream." Aria laughed, low and throaty, surprised by the flirtation in his tone, like he'd scanned her portfolio online in those 3 blocks. "Aria, and flattery from a suit? That's a glitch." Their words wove like vines, her sketches of fractured lovers under cyber moons, his empire of AI logistics that mapped desires before they formed. By the time the rain eased to a drizzle, his hand covered hers, deliberate, thumb stroking her knuckles in slow circles that mirrored the ache building low in her belly. "Come with me," he murmured, eyes darkening to midnight. Not a question. She went. His penthouse crowned the financial district, floor-to-ceiling glass framing the bay's restless dance. City lights fractured across his skin as he poured scotch, the amber liquid catching fire in his glass. "To variables we can't predict," he toasted, clinking her tumbler, his free hand grazing her waist, testing, teasing the dip above her hip bone. Aria's pulse thrummed. She set her glass down, stepping into his space, the air thickening with unspoken code. "Show me yours," she whispered, fingers tracing his collar, popping the top button to reveal the hollow of his throat, salt-kissed and begging. Damien's control frayed like a dropped packet. He captured her mouth in a kiss that tasted of smoke and urgency, lips firm, tongue delving with the precision of a man who mapped routes through chaos. She melted against him, hands fisting his shirt, pulling him toward the bedroom where moonlight pooled on silk sheets. He undressed her like unveiling art, sundress whispering to the floor, his mouth following the path, nipping her earlobe, sucking the curve of her neck until she gasped, arching into the heat of his palm cupping her breast, thumb circling the peak until it hardened like a diamond bit. "God, Arya," he groaned, voice gravel rough, lifting her onto the bed, knees parting her thighs with reverent pressure. She tugged at his belt, the clink echoing like a starting gun, freeing him, thick, velvet hard, pulsing under her touch. Their eyes locked, vulnerability flashing in his. This titan, stripped bare, craving her as much as oxygen. He entered her slow, inch by deliberate inch, stretching her with a fullness that blurred breath and bliss, her walls clenching in welcome. "More," she demanded, nails raking his shoulders, hips rising to meet his deepening rhythm, thrusts building from languid exploration to frantic claim, sweat slick, skin slapping in symphony. His hands slipped between them, fingers circling her core's swollen nub, coaxing sparks that coiled tighter, hotter, until she shattered around him. Cries muffled against his neck as waves crashed through her. He followed with a guttural roar, spilling deep, bodies locked in trembling aftershocks, his forehead pressed to hers. "You're rewriting me," he breathed, collapsing beside her, dear fingers tracing lazy patterns over her abdomen. Innocent then, but seeding futures. That night marked the algorithm of their romance. Damien's pursued a masterclass in seduction. Orchids arrived at dawn, petals unfurling like her, under his gaze. Each bouquet tagged with coordinates to hidden spots. A rooftop garden where he'd feed her strawberries, juice trailing her chin for him to lick clean, kisses turning heated until she straddled him on wrought iron benches, grinding against his hardness, through fabric, whispering promises of later. Coastal drives became rituals. Tesla-hugging cliffs, pulling over at secluded bluffs where fog cloaked their urgency. One twilight, waves thundering below, he pinned her against sun-warmed granite, skirt hiked to her waist, his mouth tracing inner thighs, teeth grazing lace before tearing it aside, tongue delving into her slick folds with devastating accuracy. "Come for me," he commanded, voice vibrating against her clit, fingers curling inside to stroke that hidden ridge until she bucked, release flooding her in salty pulses, his name a chant on the wind. Then he'd claim her standing, one leg hooked over his hip, thrusts urgent and deep, the ocean's roar drowning her moans as they crested together. Fulfillment, a shared horizon. But shadows crept in the code. Damien's family loomed like legacy heirs. Isolde Hale, silver-haired oracle of mergers, summoning him to the cliffside estate for strategy sessions that stretched into nights. Who's the distraction? She'd probe over fusion cuisine, her gaze dissecting Arya's absence like a vulnerability scan. Brielle, the influencer sister, live-tweeted barbs. Silicon Valley's latest beta test? Ronan, the playboy brother, leered at forwarded photos, texting Damien crude emojis. Yet in stolen moments, Damien shielded her, pulling her into boardroom bathrooms for quick, fevered unions. Her back to cool tile, his hands hiking her dress, entering from behind with a thrust that stole her breath, palm over her mouth to muffle cries as he drove hard, release a whispered rebellion against his world's sterile grip. Arya ignored the warnings, lost in the longing he stoked. "You're my escape," he'd confess post-climax, bodies entwined, her head on his chest hearing the thunder of his heart. Desire blinded her to the fracture lines, until the wedding, a spectacle of holograms and vows that felt like contracts. In the honeymoon suite, as he worshipped her anew, lips mapping stretch marks that weren't there yet, fingers and tongue coaxing her to slow, shuddering peaks before filling her with tender ferocity. She believed their passion could debug any flaw. Little did she know the Hail firewall was already activating, Isolde's influence compiling the first exploits. As their first anniversary approached, the embers of courtship glowed, but the marriage's core began to overheat, longing sharpening into subtle aches, conflicts flickering like bad sectors. Damien's touches lingered less, his eyes drifting to screens mid-kiss. Yet the fire persisted, a stubborn flame against gathering gales. Hey lovers, did that penthouse blaze stir memories of your own electric beginnings? If Damien's hunger mirrors a chase that set your world alight, drop a heart in the comments and share. What's the wildest spot passion pulled you? Hit like if this romance has you hooked. Share with a friend craving that spark. Subscribe if you haven't, for tales that turn heat into heart. Let's keep the fire roaring. 2 years into the Hail Matrix, Aria's world had compressed into a subroutine of endurance. Penthouse echoes hollow, her designs relegated to hobby sketches on Damien's desk amid stacks of acquisition reports. The courtship's wildfire had banked to control burn, intimacy rationed like bandwidth. Hurried mornings where he'd take her from behind against the shower glass, water cascading over joined bodies. His hand splayed possessive on her belly as he thrust with mechanical precision. Her moans blending with steam until release left them both gasping but distant. Later, he'd promise, dressing for dawn meetings, leaving her with the scent of him fading like a cached file. Isolde's estate dinners became weekly viruses, vaulted halls of polished concrete and abstract sculptures, where Aria served artisanal bites on silver trays, her sundress swapped for Isolde's approved sheaths that hugged too tight, exposing curves meant for private eyes. Darling, the plating's off, Isolde would critique, voice silk over steel, gesturing at invisible flaws while Brielle angled her phone, capturing candid clips for her feeds. Aria's hand trembling on a flute, captioned when the algorithm picks wrong. Ronan lounged opposite, foot accidentally brushing her calf under linen, his grin wolfish. Damien always did chase outliers, he'd quip, winking as laughter lapped like coolant fluid. Damien sat at the head, fork methodical, saying nothing. The man who'd once knelt between her thighs on cliffside rocks, tongue coaxing her to quivering edges before rising to bury himself deep, now watched her like a peripheral device. Useful, but non-essential. You're tense, he'd murmur later in the limo, hand on her knee, sliding upward in absent exploration. But tension coiled tighter. Her responses feigned, body craving the raw vulnerability of their early codes. When he'd confess mid-thrust, "You're my only constant," voice breaking as she clenched around him, pulling him under. The fracture deepened in fragments. Boardroom galas, where executives queried her contributions, like bugs in beta, Isolde's asides about legacy compatibility, slicing mid-conversation. Aria adapted, spine straight, smiles calibrated, but isolation bred quiet rebellion. In her studio corner of the penthouse, she archived shadows, screenshots of Ronan's HR complaints buried in NDAs, Brielle's diverted foundation funds funneled to vanity ventures, Isolde's emails greenlighting insider whispers that skirted SEC lines. Not malice, but metadata, insurance against the growing void, her designs evolving into veil-forged prototypes, sensual avatars of women unbound, bodies arched in digital ecstasy that mirrored her suppressed fires. Then came the night that cracked the firewall. 4 months passed, Damien stumbling from a merger wake, bourbon on his breath, eyes wild with the empire's grind. He bypassed the master suite, drawn to her exiled guest room like a magnet to south. "I can't breathe without you," he rasped, door slamming, hands framing her face in the dim lamplight. Aria froze, heart-slamming code, longing flooding back, sharp as a stack overflow. Damien. But his mouth silenced protest, kiss bruising with neglect's famine, tongue claiming hers in desperate sweeps that tasted of regret and rye. He yanked her nightgown over her head, exposing skin flushed with sudden need, his gaze devouring the swell of her breasts, the dip of her waist. "Missed this," he growled, palms cupping her, thumbs teasing nipples to aching points before his mouth followed. Sucking hard, teeth grazing until she whimpered, fingers threading his hair. She shoved him toward the wall, reversal a spark of power, unbuckling his belt with trembling and urgency. His length sprang free, heavy and hot in her grip. She stroked firm, base to tip, watching his head fall back, groan rumbling like thunder. Aria, fuck, yes. He spun her, pressing her front to cool plaster, one hand pinning her wrists above, the other hiking her thigh to hook his hip. Entry was slick, urgent, no preamble, just him sheathing deep in one thrust that tore a cry from her throat, walls fluttering around his girth. So tight, he panted, rhythm building. Slow withdrawals to teasing plunges, then harder, faster, hips snapping with reclaimed ferocity. Her free hand clawed the wall, body arching back into him. The angle hitting that inner spark with every drive. Pleasure coiling vicious. Tell me you're mine, he demanded, voice raw at her ear, teeth nipping lobe as his fingers dipped low, circling her clit in slick loops. Vulnerability cracked open. Always, she gasped. Not lie, but lifeline. Climax ripping through her in blinding waves, milking him until he buried deep, spilling with a shattered moan. Hot pulses filling her as they slumped, breaths sinking in the haze. In the rug-tangled aftermath, his fingers traced her abdomen, gentle, unknowing of the life stirring there, conceived in that whiskey-fueled reclamation. We'll get away, he whispered, lips brushing her temple. No more ghosts. She curled into him, believing for a stolen hour, the vulnerability a balm on longing's raw edge. But dawn brought server's hum, his phone buzzing with Isolde's summons, and the promise evaporated like mist. Pregnancy bloomed secret, faint nausea masked as stress, the flutter a private rebellion against the erosion. Aria's design sharpened, veil-forged sketches of lovers entangled in code veins, bodies merging in luminous throes, each stroke venting the conflict churning within. Damien noticed the distance, touches lingering in query, a hand on her lower back during dinners, thumb pressing in circles that stirred heat despite the chill. What's wrong, he'd ask in bed, spooning her, hardness nestling against her curves, teasing but held back by her guarded size. One evening, post-dinner charade, Isolde cornered her in the powder room, mirror reflecting twin predators. He'll outgrow this phase, the matriarch purred, adjusting pearls like armor. Empires demand focus, not distractions. Aria's reflection met hers, fire banking in gray eyes. Love isn't a phase, it's the upgrade you fear. Isolde's laugh chilled. Phases pass, legacies endure. The words lodged like malware, amplifying stakes. Aria's archive grew, timestamps on Ronan's late-night texts to interns, Brielle's photoshopped receipts, Isolde's offshore pings. Not for destruction, but defense. The babe's kicks a drumbeat urging flight paths. Longing twisted. Nights alone she'd trace her changing form, fingers dipping to ease the ache Damien no longer sated, imagining his mouth there, tongue swirling, drawing her to edged release with whispered devotions. Conflict raged, desire for the man who'd ignited her warring with fury at his silences. As the gala loomed, centurion of Hael's centennial, Aria felt the code compiling. Her crimson gown, a sheath of concealed blades. Belly's curve hidden but insistent. Damien's glances held questions. Touches, electric. But unanswered, longing a live wire between them, vulnerability veiled in routine. Little did he know, the erosion had forged her into something unbreakable. The Empire's foundations riddled with her quiet exploits, ready to cascade at a single command. The Expo Center pulsed like a neural net on overdrive, holographic investors mingling with AI avatars, champagne flutes chiming against neural implants, the air thick with cologne and calculated charm. Aria navigated the throng in her crimson sheath, fabric engineered to shift opacity like moods. Demure in shadows, daring under spotlights that kissed her skin, accentuating the subtle round of her abdomen she shielded with a clutch. Isolde's choice, delivered with a smile sharp as syntax errors. Disruptive elegance. For the theme. It clung like accusation, but Arya wore it as armor, each step a reminder of the life within. Fluttering Morse, survive. Damien held court near the raised dais, laughter booming as he demoed the latest logistics sim, cargo drones swarming in projected glory. His tuxedo tailored to lethal lines, cufflinks glinting like data points. But his eyes sought her across the room, fleeting, loaded with the unspoken from their wall tryst weeks prior. A brush in the foyer earlier, his fingers lingering on her elbow, thumb grazing inner arm in a caress that sent heat pooling low, had promised more, but duty dragged him away. Longing gnawed her. She sipped sparkling water, watching him charm a pearl-draped heiress, the sight twisting conflict into knots. The orchestra launched into a waltz of synthesized violins, couples pairing like matched datasets. Arya's resolve hardened, desire demanding one unscripted line. She wove through silk and sequins, heels echoing urgency, touching his sleeve where muscle tensed under wool. Dance with me, Damien. Her voice husky, eyes locking with the storm-gray plea that once undid him. He glanced at his circle, investors' gazes curious, Isolde's from afar a glacial scan. Arya, the timing, but she leaned closer, breath ghosting his jaw, the old electricity crackling. One turn, for us. Reluctance warred in his posture, but he yielded, hand spanning her waist, fingers splaying possessive, heat seeping through silk to brand her skin. They moved into the flow, body sinking despite the stiffness, her curves brushing his chest in teasing grazes, his thigh slotting between hers on turns, stirring unwelcome friction that beaded sweat at her nape. Vulnerability flickered, his breath warm on her temple, a ghost of bourbon nights. Emboldened, wine's courage and babe's kick fueling her, Arya tilted up, lips parting for a kiss, soft, seeking, a bridge over their chasm. He jerked back, recoil violent as a system halt, her stumble masked by his grip. I'd sooner interface with my own simulation than kiss you now. The words detonated, slicing music and murmurs, heads swiveled, devices tilting like sensors locking target. Laughter bubbled, Isolde's circle first, then rippling outward, champagne veiling cruelty. You don't even ping my priorities. Stay peripheral. Brielle's stream captured it all. Ronan's smirk, a low-frequency hum. The elite's amusement, a firewall sealing her out. Time fragmented. Arya's cheeks blazed, but beneath humiliation, code recompiled, longing transmuting to laser focus. The room's breath held, a collective buffer overflow. She straightened, meeting his obsidian stare. Voice emerging, smoke-laced silk, seductive in its steel. Spot on, Damien. I don't align with your priorities. Mine crave heat, not headers. A man with fire in his veins, not firewalls. Gasps cascaded, devices whirring overtime. Your simulation? It crashes less than you under pressure. At least it adapts. Me? I see the man puppeteered by maternal mainframes, strings so embedded, she scripts your every shallow dive. Chaos ignited, Isolde's face ashen, Brielle's feet fumbling, Ronan's glass clinking frozen. Savor your sterile sinks, love, Arya purred, tone a caress over blade, hips swaying retreat. They're the only consistent voids you'll code. She glided through the bisecting crowd, crimson trailing like blood in water, leaving Damien stranded in the data storm of stairs. Outside, rain lashed the valet awning, a deluge mirroring her fracture. No car waited, her clutch held only keys to chains. She plunged into the torrent, gown sodden and translucent, heels discarded on slick marble for barefooted flight. Blocks blurred, neon reflecting in puddles like shattered vows. The babe's flutter, a defiant pulse against her palm. Vulnerability crested in sobs swallowed by thunder. But resolve armored her. Archive ready, fingers numb on phone as she cued the encrypted drop to her journalist contacts. Unleash, she typed, thumb hovering before commit. Send. By midnight, the inferno spread viral, headlines erupting across feeds. Hailed dynamics, insider scandals exposed in data deluge. Ronan's harassment logs trended with victim testimonies. Brielle's slush fund diversions sparked influencer backlash, her streams hemorrhaging followers. Isolde's trades pinged SEC alerts, board whispers fracturing into resignations. Stock nosedived 40% in frantic after hours. Partners' jets rerouting midair. Damien's penthouse screen screamed alerts, his reflection ghostly amid the blaze. Empire not aflame, but eviscerated by leaked light, every sin illuminated. He paced the glass expanse, bourbon forgotten, replaying her retort, puppeteered by maternal mainframes. Truth's burn outstripped any boardroom loss. The woman he'd coded out had debugged them all. Calls flooded. Isolde's furia hissed through static. Fix this, or you're purged. But Damien's mind looped to her. Rain-slicked flight, the kiss he'd rejected from fear. Not faded fire, longing surge, raw as exposed wire. Desire for the aria who'd arched under him, walls clenching in ecstasy, now weaponized into this cascade. Dawn broke gray over the bay, aria collapsing on a driftwood bench in Eldridge Hollow's cove. Miles vanished in adrenaline's blur. Gown tattered, feet raw, she curled protective over her swell, rain washing salt from lashes. The babe kicked, steady, unyielding. Vulnerability yielded to clarity. This cataclysm wasn't end, but eject. Love's illusion torched, revealing her core code, resilient, radiant, ready to rewrite. Exhaustion claimed her, but not before a shadow approached. Mira Thorne, salt windswept, extending a hand like an anchor. Tides turned fierce tonight. Come inside. Stories wait for dry hearth. Aria rose, leaning into the stranger's steadiness, the first step from ashes. If that gala gut punch echoes a moment, your heart hit eject. Lean in, comment below. What's the boldest line you wish you'd fired in love's crossfire? Like if Aria's fire fuels your own, share this blaze with a soul needing ignition, and subscribe for the rebuilds that rise hotter. The Cove calls. What secrets does it hold? Eldridge Hollow's bookstore cottage breathed salt and solace, shelves groaning under tomes of whispered liaisons, lovers defying dynasties in ink-stained prose. Mira Thorne's domain, a widow's lighthouse of lore, where foghorns moaned like unrequited sighs. Aria woke to chamomile haze, body aching from rain's scourge. The babes flutter, a gentle reboot. You've a storm in you, Mira said over porridge, her gaze kind but keen, lines etched from coves weathered. No interrogations, only offers. Shelf what heals or burn what doesn't. Aria stayed, weaving into the rhythm. Mornings foraging sea-slick rocks for arugula that bit like truth. Afternoons dusting spines of forbidden romances. Fingers lingering on passages where heroines claim their hungers. Veilforge took root in the attic. Her laptop humming blueprints. Avatars of women entwined in luminous code. Thighs parted in defiant bloom. Pixels pulsing with the ecstasy she'd once chased in Damien's arms. Commissions trickled, a startup icon of merged forms, bodies arching in shared release, netting enough for prenatal scans that confirmed the spark's strength. Motherhood's curve reshaped her, breasts fuller, hips swaying with newfound gravity, skin glowing from Mira's herb baths. Nights, longing ambushed, dreams of Damien's mouth on her, tongue tracing stretch marks like sacred paths, fingers delving deep to curl against that ridge until she quaked, waking slick and solitary. She'd ease the throb in alcove shadows, touch circling, slow, building to hushed climaxes that left her hollow. Desire's echo, not fulfillment. The accusation dropped like a legacy exploit, tabloids swarming the hollow, thief in the tide. Hail heirloom vanishes with ex-wife. Isolde's frame, the emerald prototype necklace, chip-embedded relic, discovered in Aria's gala clutch at the estate. Paparazzi drones buzzed cove edges, headlines twisting flight to felony. Mira barred them with a harpoon's glare, but Damien arrived at dusk, rain-lashed, spectral, in a drenched trench, pounding the door like a desperate ping. Open, Mira, it's me. His voice cracked through oak, thunder underscoring. She cracked it, axe in hand, but Aria emerged, smock tenting her 5-month swell, fire banking in storm eyes. What glitch brings you here? Mira retreated a pace, sensing the charge. You torched everything, Damien accused, stepping over threshold, water pooling at boots. Rain traced his jaw, shirt clinging to muscled planes that stirred traitorous heat. Mother's furious. SEC circling. Partners ghosts. One outburst, Arya, and you nuke it all? Laughter escaped her, bitter-edged with old seduction. Outburst? You gutted me publicly, Damien, peripheral, while your pack bayed. I leaked truths you coded blind. He closed distance, air crackling, cedar and ozone clashing with brine, his hand lifting to her cheek, thumb brushing rain from her lip. I was wrong. Every metric failed me that night. Vulnerability bled through, eyes tracing her form, lingering on the curve he hadn't clocked. The babe kicked, his palm hovered, then pressed, gentle, reverent. This? Conflict ignited, her breath hitching at the touch's ghost, fingers that once parted her, stroking to shattering. Yours, she admitted, voice husky. Hidden because I knew your firewall would purge it. He groaned, forehead to hers, the intimacy a live wire. God, Arya, I see it now. The nights I let them dim us. His lips brushed her temple, trailing to jaw, testing, teasing the pulse that leaped. She shoved him, but body betrayed, nipples peeking against cotton, core clenching with forbidden want. No absolution in whispers. Yet when his mouth claimed hers, it was maelstrom, tongues tangling fierce, hands roaming, his cupping her swell protectively, hers fisting wet shirt. He lifted her to the hall table, gowns irrelevant, legs parting as he knelt, gaze worshipful on her parted thighs. Let me, he rasped, fingers easing fabric aside, breath hot on slick folds before tongue delved. Long, languid laps that parted her, circling clit with devastating swirl. She arched, hand in his hair, moans spilling as he sucked gentle, fingers sliding home to curl, building, breaking her on a sob of release, waves crashing pure and purging. Rising, he sought her entrance, hardness straining, but she halted, palm firm on his chest. This means nothing. Your echo, not anchor. She guided him away, spent air heavy with what-ifs, the clash a twist, not conquest, but her claiming desire's reins. He left into gale, trench flapping, empire's embers in his eyes. Labor shattered a harvest moon, contractions like code compiling crisis, Mira's grip steady through screams that rent the cove. Seraphina arrived furious, dark curls matted, Arya's grays softened in her wail. A tempest claimed. Motherhood's intimacy bloomed erotic, babes latched fierce, drawing milk with pulls that echoed deeper yearnings. Arya's body alive, curves lush, skin humming with postpartum fire. Veil Forge exploded, sensual series of maternal muses, forms entwined in milky glow, netting 7 figures. Atelier a haven for creators fleeing grids. Damien's letters arrived via Mira, confessions inked, ruins navigated, volunteering at shelters where women's tales echoed hers, exposing hail fractures in quiet forms. Each stirred storm, romance's remnant, memories of dune fucks, her astride, riding his length to sandy frenzies, climaxes shattering like waves, fulfillment teased in fragments, but boundaries held. The reckoning forged her unbreakable, flames clashing into controlled glow. Seraphina's 3rd birthday dawned in crayon chaos, the Hollow's cottage strewn with sea glass treasures, Mira's cake a tower of berry bliss. Arya watched her daughter chase gulls, curls wild as the wind, heart swelling with fulfillment's quiet roar. 3 years of solo symphonies, lullabies laced with lessons of self-woven worth. Veil Forge towered at $20 million. Avatars are now global icons. Lovers fused in code caresses, bodies bowed in ecstatic arcs that funded scholarships for shadowed talents. Twist breached the peace. Damien's Ember Veil Initiative. Foundation aiding creatives from toxic ties, branded with her motifs, leaked as his whistleblower pivot. Donors flooded back. Hail 2.0, Phoenix rising, but barbed. A victim-led suit demanding Arya's deposition. Subpoena slicing mail like a debug knife. She met him in a bluffside cafe, neutral ground, Serafina slung to her chest in slumbering warmth, the babe's breath a rhythmic anchor. "You mind my scars for capital," Arya charged, voice low thunder, steam from latte curling like unresolved smoke. Damien's gaze raked her, fuller form a siren's call, breasts straining knit, hips a sway that haunted his letters. "I built it from our wreckage, for atonement, not assent." Longing etched his plea, hand twitching across oak to trace hers, electric, forbidden. Words warred, his defenses cracking under her fire. Vulnerability spilling in admissions of Isolde's offshore ghosts dismantled. Brielle's exile to vanity voids. Conflict crested. "Just talk," she conceded, guiding him to a rented bluff cabin, fog cloaking their ascent. Inside, hearth crackled a confession. He traced her stretch marks like verse, lips following, soft on navel, downward to part thighs with breath held reverence. "Let me honor what I missed," he murmured, tongue tracing slick seams, delving deep to lap essence, fingers joining in curled symphony, until she bowed. Release a quaking tide that left her trembling. His name a fractured prayer. She straddled him then, guiding his length home. Slow sink, walls embracing with traitorous welcome. Rocking deliberate to savage. Hips grinding circles that drew groans from his depths. "Hate how you still unravel me," she gasped, nails scoring his chest as climax built mutual. Hers clenching fierce, pulling his spill in hot pulses. Bodies locked in vulnerable quake. Tears mingling on sweat-slick skin. Dawn's light filtered guilt. Closure's code, not continuation. Testimony filed veiled, suit teetering his tentative throne. Letters evolved, chronicles, not chains. Isolde's health audit, yielding deathbed admissions. The frame confessed in whispers too late for mercy. Damien sought no harbor, only horizons shared. Years layered, Serafina's queries sharpening at 5. Mama, the shadow man in stories? Arya's truths measured, planting seeds of choice over chains. At 7, the dance tangled anew. Suits fall out, forcing a neutral summit. Cabin echoes luring to potting shed seclusion. Rain misted garden paths. Arya pulled him in, sovereignty in her stride. One echo, she breathed, earth scent mingling with desire's bloom. He knelt anew, worship slow, mouth suckling folds to edged frenzy, then rising to fill her against potting bench. Thrusts measured to ecstatic storm, her legs wrapped tight, cries harmonizing thunder. Release crashed shared, seed a futile root in soil she'd tilled alone. Fulfillment in the fracture, not the mend. She traced his self-scar, rock-bottom reminder, whispering, "I absolve the lover, not the lapse." He nodded, embers banked to alliance's glow. The tango a lesson, redemption steps earned in distance, not demand. 8 summers etched Serafina into a force. Questions like quests, crayons birthing worlds of winged beloveds. Arya's Veil Forge crested $50 million. Atelier, a cove collective. Creators crafting code-kissed intimacies. Forms fused in glowing throes that schooled on desire's dignity. Mother-daughter nights wove unbreakable. Beach bonfires where tales turned tides. Serafina's head on Arya's lap, fingers tracing maternal curves in innocent awe. "Show me the glitch man, Mama," she demanded one solstice eve. Eyes, Damien's storm softened, fierce with curiosity. The meeting orchestrated in Arya's studio, sunlight gilding easels of entwined avatars, Mira sentinel in corner. Damien knelt, trench swapped for linen simple, voice gravel. "Honey, I erred when creation called for courage." Serafina's probe was blade blunt. "You dimmed Mama's light?" He met it unflinching, vulnerability bare. "I chose shadows over shine, cowardice cloaked as code. But her fire forges futures I fuel from afar." The girl assessed, small palm on Arya's thigh tether, then nodded. Decision deferred, but door cracked. Evening waned, alone in garden mist, tension hummed. Her choice, Arya affirmed, but pulled him close, rain beating lashes like jewels. Fulfillment's edge, not erasure, but etching. Love's empire, her sovereign build. In quiet coves, with Seraphina's joy as verse and Mira's counsel chorus, Aria danced unbound, seductive in self's embrace, vulnerability valor, desire directed inward, then outward to equals who matched without mastering. Damien's visits sporadic, coding circles where he taught integrity syntax, bonfires sharing sea stories sans strings. The victory whispered, she transmuted betrayal's blaze into beacon, heart's algorithm rewritten, love not conquest, but constellation, stars claimed in her ascent. From rain-slick collision to cove-carved freedom, Aria's odyssey pulses with passion's peril and power. Desire's devouring spark, longing's lonesome code, conflict's crashing waves, vulnerability's velvet reveal, fulfillment's fierce dawn. A reminder etched in every thrust and tear, true romance roots in revelation, not facade. Empires of heart outlast silicon thrones when built on unyielding self. Radiant souls, if Aria's arc awakens your inner architect, flood the comments. What's the lie love taught you to unlearn? Like if this inferno forged your fire anew, share with a heart harboring hidden flames. Subscribe and bell up for more odysseys where betrayal births bliss every Tuesday at twilight. Your stories? They're the next chapter. Tag a tale below and let's weave worlds together. Until the next blaze, dream deep, love daringly. This is Mr. Cael's Stories, where embers become eternities.